You know, when people think of racing games on the Nintendo DS, the same name always comes up: Mario Kart DS. Now, I haven't been particularly well versed in Nintendo DS racing games, having only played Mario Kart DS, which was good, and Need for Speed Most Wanted and Burnout Legends, which were not so good. And those bad games left a sour taste in my mouth. So I went in search of some racing games on the DS that people weren't talking about to replace that sour taste with the sweet goodness of quality racing games. There were games I found that tried weird ideas, pushed the limits of what the little handheld could do, or just brought surprisingly good racing to a system not really known for its horsepower. So today we're looking at a few underrated DS racing games that definitely deserve a second lap. These aren't in any particular order, we're just gonna yap about some good racing games. Let's start with one that was ahead of its time in ways people still don't talk about. So first up, TrackMania Turbo. If you've ever played TrackMania on PC or consoles, you know the deal. It's all about fast laps, crazy stunts, and pure skill-based time trials. Something I'm not particularly good at. No power-ups, no rubber banding AI, just you, the clock, and some of the most insanely ridiculous track designs you'll ever see. But here's the wild thing. In 2010, Firebrand Games somehow squeezed that TrackMania magic into the two screens of the Nintendo DS. And somehow it actually worked. You got over 100 tracks split across 4 different environments, and even a fully functional track editor. On the DS! That's right, you could build your own tracks with ramps, loops, and jumps, and then just race them right away. That level of track editor being on the DS completely blew me away. You know, does it look great in terms of modern standards? No, but on the DS this is absolutely fantastic. It's the kind of feature that felt almost unreal. Now, the graphics obviously took a hit compared to console and PC versions, simplified models and low draw distance, and occasional performance issues. But the feel of TrackMania is right there. The handling's tight, the speed feels right, and I had that sense of just one more try that the series is known for. One of the coolest things for me was how each environment actually changed how the car behaves. Like the desert tracks were all about sliding around, while the classic stadium ones rewarded precision and control. To me, it gave the game a surprising amount of depth for something that looks quite simple. This could have easily just been a conversion of a console version that didn't translate well, but TrackMania Turbo was designed for the DS, and that makes all the difference. It feels fast, focused, and just fun. Honestly, I find it so impressive how much they managed to cram in this game. You could tell Firebrand really understood what made TrackMania tick. It's not about fancy graphics, it's about a perfect flow, and this DS version really nailed it. Unfortunately, it didn't get heaps of attention at release, with VG charts estimating the game to have sold only about 50,000 copies, but the game reviewed pretty well with a 77 out of 100 average on Metacritic. But I'm thinking mostly because by 2010, the DS was kind of already winding down and ending its era. People were looking towards the 3DS, which was launching the following year. If you ever stumble across a copy, give it a go. It's the kind of game that's A, fun, and B, will make you go, how does this even run on this console? Now, before we go any further, if you're a fan of racing games, underrated racing games, or the Nintendo DS, then why not hit that subscribe button and tap the bell for notifications to stay up to date with my future uploads. And whilst you're at it, if you want to be the first to hear about all my upcoming projects, then join my Discord server using the link in the description below. We also just yap about cool games there, so it's always worth a look. Anyway, that's enough plugging the channel, let's move on to our next game. Okay, so now for one of my personal favourites, Sideswiped. If you've never heard of it, don't worry, because it seems to me that most people haven't. This one came out in 2009, published by Majesco and developed by Recom. It's basically Burnout, but on a much lower budget. But honestly, it works way better than it has any right to. The whole idea is completely simple: cause as much chaos as possible. You earn points for smashing into traffic, wrecking opponents, or just basically flying all over the place. It's arcade-style mayhem with short bursts of fun that I thought were perfect for handheld play. Unlike a lot of DS racers, Sideswiped just goes all in on destruction, and it really puts the Burnout port on DS to shame. Every crash can send cars flying, and it makes me laugh every single time because it just looks so funny. The game keeps rewarding you for being reckless. It was just pure dopamine rush. The art style's pretty cool too. It's got this colourful, kinda cel-shaded look that gives it personality without straining the DS hardware too much. It's almost like a comic book version of a Crash Derby. And all things considered, bearing in mind how much is going on the screen at any moment, the frame rate is surprisingly solid. You can tell the devs focused on keeping things smooth and fast, even if it meant simplifying some visuals. The missions are all quite short, like 1 or 2 minutes each, but that's part of the charm. It's the kind of game you can pick up, do a few challenges, and put back down again. But it's addictive because you're constantly chasing a better score, trying to chain bigger crashes, or get that perfect run. Or in my case, send as many cars flying to the moon as you possibly could. There's also this satisfying sense of feedback, where the cars explode and bounce about in an almost cartoonish style. It's just fun, really, like unapologetically fun. You can tell it's a game that didn't have a huge budget, but it certainly made the most of what it had. The menu design, the stylized vehicles, the little touches like camera shake, it all comes together to make something quite unique. It's certainly not realistic, but it definitely doesn't need to be. It's arcade chaos done right. If you're the kind of player who loves Burnout mayhem, Sideswiped is a hidden gem you should definitely track down. It's the definition of an underrated DS racer. One that does its own thing, doesn't overcomplicate it, and ends up being way more fun than it looks. I wasn't able to find any review scores for this game, but there's one user score on Metacritic putting it at an 8 out of 10. It also is only estimated to have sold about 10,000 copies as per VG charts. Anyway, let's move on to our next game. So next up, let's talk about Ridge Racer DS. Now, Ridge Racer is one of those legendary arcade franchises that helps define 90s racing. Bright tracks and smooth drifts, and that unmistakable announcer yelling Ridge Racer. So when Namco decided to bring it to the DS as a launch title back in 2004, it definitely made sense. But here's the thing, Ridge Racer DS kind of flew under the radar due to the passage of time, and it really shouldn't have. First off, this game actually feels like classic Ridge Racer. The handling is buttery smooth, like slide around corners with a smile kind of smooth, the kind of smooth I'd expect from a console or arcade version of Ridge Racer, so it's nice to see it's translated well here. It's got that perfect balance between arcade speed and precise control, and visually I think it's one of the best looking early DS games. It's based on Ridge Racer 64, so it's definitely not original, but that's not a bad thing, because that game was already great. The DS version keeps the same track layouts, the same fast-paced drifting, and that same flashy arcade energy, except now you can play it anywhere, and you don't need a big clunky cartridge for it. One thing people forget is that Ridge Racer DS actually tried some interesting stuff with the DS hardware. Like, you could use the touchscreen as a steering wheel. I couldn't get on with this at all, so I just stuck to the D-pad, but hey, it's there if you want to use it. That feature to me kind of felt like a tech demo for an early mobile racer, but it's cool that they tried, and I'm going to give them credit for that. As I mentioned, thankfully you could use the D-pad, which feels a lot more natural. And once you get into that rhythm of power sliding through turns, it really scratches that Ridge Racer itch. Soundtrack-wise, it's pure Namco goodness, upbeat techno tracks that keep your heart pumping while you race through sunny city streets and neon tunnels. It's got that vibe of a game that doesn't take itself too seriously, it just wants you to have fun. And that's the kind of thing that I like in a racing game. The big reason it didn't get more love, in my opinion, is timing. You see, in every region where Ridge Racer released, there was less than 12 months between that and the launch of Mario Kart DS, with there being less than 5 or 6 months in some regions like Europe. Now, in terms of review scores, Ridge Racer DS holds a okay score of 63 out of 100 on Metacritic, and it sold alright as well, with 150,000 copies estimated to have been sold. But if we compare that to Mario Kart DS, which followed shortly after, that game sold 23 million units. A lot more. But if you can look past the shadow of Nintendo's mascot racer, Ridge Racer DS delivers some genuinely solid arcade action. It's stylish, smooth, and I thought it was a complete blast to play. So it's not groundbreaking, but it's proof that the DS could handle classic style racing just fine. And in my opinion, it still feels good 21 years later. Alright, so this next one might surprise you. Cars Meta National Championship for the DS. Yeah, that's right, we're talking Cars, the sequel to the movie tie-in game on the DS. But hear me out, this version is actually really good. This one was developed by Tantalus Interactive, the same folks who did the Game Boy Advance version. And if you remember that Game Boy Advance port, it was a pretty impressive 3D racer. But the DS version is basically the full experience that the GBA version was trying to be. In fact, the GBA release is pretty much just a scaled down version of this one. They even managed to include that cursed opening cutscene. You know the one.
Ladies and gentlemen.
But here it's actually a real CGI cutscene, not just a slideshow of JPEGs with text underneath. Now don't get me wrong, most of the other cutscenes are still static images with dialogue boxes, but that's totally fine. Nobody was expecting Pixar quality animation on a DS cartridge in 2007. And speaking of that, this came out in late 2007, and fun fact, the DS version actually had the highest Metacritic score out of all the platforms, sitting at a very respectable 69 out of 100. The game also sold pretty well, with just under 700,000 copies shifted for the DS. For comparison, the DS version of the first Cars game only scored a 54 out of 100, which is just quite sad. Now, having played the console version of Meta National, it's a surprisingly faithful adaptation, just without the open world elements. Instead, you end up with a series of compact but well-designed tracks that still manage to capture the Radiator Springs charm. The track design here, in my opinion, is genuinely solid. There are hidden shortcuts, collectible icons scattered around, and some clever course layouts that make it feel like more than a basic movie tie-in sequel. You've got jumps, drift mechanics, and races featuring all the international competitors from the main game. It's light-hearted, colourful, and honestly, a good time. It's definitely on the easier side, it is a Cars game after all, but it's not nearly as mindless as the GBA version was. You can actually get into a groove with the handling, chaining drifts, and nailing shortcuts like it's Mario Kart Lite. Now I do have to mention the one thing that's truly cursed about this game, and I've mentioned it before, the model for Lightning McQueen. Ugh, damn.
Holy God, what are you showing me? Come on!
I'll use the exact same phrase I used last time, and it's just cooked beyond belief. There's just something about it that isn't right, but hey, we love him anyway. Now, as much as I'm praising it, it's not a perfect game. There are a few tracks where the handling feels weird, but the worst offender, hands down, is this one segment where you race in a dark cave at night, because Lightning, as I'm sure you know, doesn't have real headlights, he's got stickers. So he wears night vision goggles, which puts this awful green tinted filter that makes it feel like you're doing a Spec Ops mission on Call of Duty. Cool idea on paper, but in reality it's just awful. I did not enjoy it. But aside from that one race with a weird design choice, Meta National Championship on the DS is genuinely impressive. It's fun, it's charming, and it runs smoothly. And finally, let's talk about Race Driver Grid. Yes, that Grid, on the DS. Now, most people know Grid as a console and PC franchise known for its realistic visuals and deep handling model. So naturally, when they announced the DS version, everyone thought, okay, this is not going to be good. But no, somehow, beyond all expectations, the DS version actually slapped. This one was developed by Firebrand Games, yeah, the same team behind TrackMania Turbo, and honestly, these guys were wizards when it came to DS racing tech. They managed to make a version of Grid that kept the feel of the original, even if it didn't have the graphics to match. You've got a career mode and even proper licensed tracks and cars. And what's crazy is that it all runs smooth, controls well, and looks surprisingly sharp for a DS title. The car models are clean, the environments are varied, and the sense of speed is actually pretty damn good. What really makes it stand out to me though is how refined it feels. The physics are impressive, cars actually handle differently depending on their type, and you can sense weight shifting as you corner or brake. It's certainly not simulation level depth, but for the Nintendo DS, it's way beyond anything I was expecting. They even included a replay feature, something almost no other DS racers had. You could watch your race back, complete with camera angles, and it looked pretty good. It's that little extra polish that makes it clear Firebrand really cared. There's a good amount of content as well, lots of events, multiple vehicle classes, and enough difficulty to keep you invested. It's got that perfect balance of challenge and accessibility. The soundtrack's pretty good, the presentation feels good, and it's a game that genuinely impressed me with how hard they tried and how much they pulled off. And yet, it still kind of went unnoticed, with only 50,000 copies estimated to have been sold. Maybe because people assumed the DS couldn't handle something like Grid, or maybe because handheld racers were just not of interest at this point. But if you're into technical racers and want to see the DS pushed to its limits, this is one to play. The game holds a very nice 79 out of 100 on Metacritic for the DS version as well, which is very good going. It's a game that's proof that with the right developers, even a system with limited hardware could deliver something that felt like a premium experience. So yeah, looking back at the DS's racing library, it's kinda wild how many hidden gems there were and how many quality games are there. You had the creativity of TrackMania Turbo, the classic drift style of Ridge Racer DS, the ridiculous fun of Sideswiped, the surprising amount of polish and depth in Grid, and the unexpectedly great Cars Made to National Championship. Each one tried something different, and each one proved that you didn't need fancy hardware to make a racing game that was fun, fast, but also damn memorable. So if you're digging through DS cartridges and spot one of these, grab it because they're all absolutely worth trying. So what do you think? Are there other DS racing games that you think are underrated that I might have missed, or do you agree with some of the games on this list? Either way, let me know in the comments down below. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to leave a like, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe and tap the bell for notifications to stay up to date with my future uploads. A massive shout out to my Patreon subscribers for the continued support, and all I really have left to say is thanks and bye bye.